on Evolutionary.org Hardcore 2.0, episode 100 coming your way on this one. So, best bulking steroid options from Para Pharma. And this is a part one episode of a special 100 that's going to be our next episode. So make sure you check that one out. When it is out, should be out in another a few days. So let's talk about this a little bit. And on this podcast, look, we're going to talk about best bulking steroid options. We're going to go over new school versus old school bulking, how things have changed. Mobsters kind of give the history on that, and we're going to give our opinions on why things have changed in that direction. We're going to talk about simple diet and training ideas for bulking. We're going to talk about new versus advanced user bulker ideas. So no matter where you are on your steroid journey, whether you've never used steroids before and you're looking for ideas, or if you're experienced and you're looking for some new ideas to try for bulking, this is going to be the podcast for you. And of course, we're going to talk about why Para Pharma is trusted, why Mobster and I trust Para Pharma with our own bodies. And that's very, very important. So let's start with adding lean muscle, new school versus old school. So Mobster came up with this idea on the pre-show, and I think it's a really good one. So, Mobster, why don't you start off on this?
So as regular listeners will know, Steve, I'm a bit of a fan of the history of the Iron Game. And of course, because I've been doing this shit for a long time, 45, 46 years this year, since 1980, my magazine collection, my book collection goes back to literally to 1900 or 1901. So 123 years, 124 years. And I was on the edge of, and I certainly started to read the magazines around that time with regards to, as Arnold was finishing his last Olympia, that's when I came into the sport. But I was even buying a few of the older magazines then, Steve, from the mid to late 70s. So I'm more than familiar with the idea of how people used to bulk back in the day. And this will include being on or off anabolics. So the fans of the history of the Iron Game will tell you that it was incredibly common for a very long time, probably a period of, I'm going to say, late 50s through the 60s into the 70s, and maybe right up to the edge of the 80s. You would still see people gaining 15, 20 pounds more sometimes, Steve, in the off season. And there were occasionally photographs, and even probably into the early 2000s, you would occasionally see these pictures of out of condition, out of shape, bordering on obese bodybuilders. I think the worst one we had was in the mid 2000s, pre-COVID, whatever, where one person whose name escapes me right now turned up for one of these guest posing things, and people was astonished at the off-season shape. They couldn't get their head around the fact you're so used to social media, they're so used to YouTube, so used to. I'm thinking of Sean Roden is one example, Steve, and he's not the only one, where he turned up and there was no abs. It was like a balloon man. You could see that in silhouette he was still a bodybuilder, but when the lights came up for one of the, it's the show put on by the NBC chairman, and again whose name escapes me. And they just couldn't get their head around the fact that he wasn't in even vaguely muscular shape. But that was kind of rare at that particular point. What was very common, as I said before, was off-season gains, bulking up 30, 40 pounds. Worse, a few examples were worse. Normal was 20 pounds. So what happened over time? First off, gaining 20 pounds in the off-season, bulking up. The idea was that you added some fat at the same time, and it was made it easier. And I actually want to touch on this when we talk about bulking steroid options, etc. Having a little bit of extra body fat is actually kind of anabolic. If you're crazy lean and you want to add 5, 6, 7 pounds of muscle, you're actually kind of holding yourself back a little bit when it comes to anabolism and muscle sparing and energy sparing, etc., by staying, say, for example, see sub 8%, sub 10%, and then adding 2 or 3 pounds of muscle tissue. You're kind of almost leaving something on the table. You're better add going up a couple of percent of body fat and adding 4 pounds, 5 pounds, or 6 pounds of muscle tissue, because you can always lose 1 or 2% and get back to as lean as you was with the new muscle tissue retained later on. And that's become arguably the way that it went. The problem with the old school idea, Steve, and this was very true, is let's say for argument's sake, you've competed, you're very lean, you're in muscular shape, you win your class, you win the overall. What and then add 20, 30, 40 pounds. If you left it too fucking late coming into the new season for competing, you made it that much harder to get lean. And lean is competition shape, being on stage, being competition ready. 16 weeks might not be enough if you put on 30 fucking pounds. And if 10, 15 pounds of that is at least 10 or 15 pounds of that is body fat, then that's 10 or 15 pounds of body fat you've got to lose. And 16 weeks of everything else that you're doing ready to get for a show, we would see occasionally people that had missed their peak, and they'd missed their peak because they were 2 weeks or 3 weeks out and the date had arrived. So they made it super, super hard. Something else, and I'll bring Steve in for this as well, and we've seen this become more and more common, is that people like, and again, social media has this influence, Steve, people like to retain some degree of shape. You do not need to be under 10%, but people like, especially for social media photographs, especially if you're a pro and your image is what makes you money, people like to retain some semblance of shape. You do not need to be competition ready. You don't need to be stage ready. You don't need to be shredded to fuck. Some odd one or two have a genetic medical condition that made that happen. Joe Aesthetic, who passed away, had that kind of medical condition. And you don't need, as I said, ironically, to be super lean. In fact, you need a little bit of body fat to create a situation of being that little bit more anabolic in terms of being able to build muscle. But the reality is, and again, this applies more to our typical listener, Steve and I have touched on this a bunch of times. But two things come in here. One is it's probably more sensible and easier to do 2 or 3 relatively short or 2 moderate length cycles through the year where you add 3 or 4 or 5 pounds of lean muscle tissue, tiny bit of body fat, and do that a couple of times. And if it was 3 or 4 pounds, that's 6 to 8 pounds of tissue per year. I know when you're younger, that can be frustrating to hang on to it for that long. Oh, come on, Steve, that means I've got to do another year. But that's the reality. And doing that year on year makes the most sense. It's easier for your body to get used to, which is the second part. And Steve and I actually talked about this in a pre-show. Just this morning, we talked in response to a query that was in one of the regular posts. Was one of the listeners, one of the members of the forum was having carpal tunnel issues. And I pointed out that by virtue of the information they provided themselves, they at some point in training hard, eating, dieting down, losing body fat, etc., they'd still achieved a really rather large amount of muscle at 278 pounds. And Steve and I actually done a podcast on what it feels like to be really big. I bulked up like a motherfucker. And I actually pointed out that even if it was mostly muscle, and in fact, even if it was worse, it was mostly muscle, being a big motherfucker, adding a lot of weight, just being 278 pounds in the case of the member, as an example, will put a certain degree of pressure on your body. And I talked about in the bulking show, the really big, how does it feel to be really big show with Steve, that mates of mine that competing strongman, 150 kilos, 330 plus pounds, myself included, you have to wrap yourself around pillows, you have to sleep a certain kind of way in the bed, etc., and just being uncomfortable. And it takes a while to get used to being that size. It takes a while, even just adding, in my case, back in the day, Steve, 5 pounds of muscle would take me typically 3 months before I felt truly comfortable adding that kind of muscle. Now, can you imagine if I was, or you for that matter, at this point in our careers, suddenly throwing 20 or 30 pounds on our body? It's much easier to get used to adding 3, 4, 5 pounds of tissue. So the old way was sometimes 20 pounds. I've heard of even way up in the 50s and 60s, Steve, in the off season, that 30 pound wasn't uncommon. Now, as I bring you in for this, we're way more likely to see what we call lean bulking, way more likely to see 3, 4, 5 pounds of muscle, a little bit of body fat. So talk about the more modern approach versus, as I discussed, the older approach now.
So I think a big part of that too, Mobster, is that things have changed in in terms of, where we've come from over time. I'll give you an example. If you go to the high schools today, you'll see much more overweight kids today than there was 30 years ago, 40 years ago, 50 years ago, surely 67 years ago, and surely 100 years ago. 100 years ago, you go to a high school and you want to find a single obese kid. Okay. Maybe they'd be one out of 1,000 that was obese. Now you go to a high school and most of the kids
Yeah,
will be
yeah,
overweight.
a
And
lot.
like if you go, like, because I used to coach, do a lot of coaching in school and stuff. I used to do volunteer football coaching as well. And I'll give you an example. Today, most of the kids that go off of the football team, they're looking to play, on the line, offensive line, defensive line, because they're too overweight to play a skill position where they have to run a lot.
Yeah, no
So
running, no quarterback.
but back in the day, everybody wanted to play the skill position. They wanted to be a running back, or they wanted to be a receiver, or they wanted to play corner or safety, or even outside linebacker or edge rusher, something like that, which requires speed. Now they play, everyone wants to play nose tackle. You've got like 20 nose tackles that come out for the team, and you got like 5 guys that come out for corner. So that's another example. We're much more bigger today. And a lot of that is because we grew up the way our parents fed us. Having access to eat what we want when we want has
Yes.
caused our bodies to become insulin resistant. And the evidence of that is a type 2 diabetes surge in America. We're talking about 1 out of every 4 person in America
Wow.
is a type
Wow.
2 diabetic, and 1 out of 3 is insulin resistant, where they're close to becoming type 2 diabetic. And that's insane.
That's
And it
fucking.
wasn't like that 100 years ago or 50 years ago or even 30 years ago. It wasn't like that. And
No.
100 years ago, that number was like less than 2%. So, and that's one of the big reasons why people today, Mobster, they're scared to bulk, because if you bulk, you may never be able to lean back out very easily again, because our bodies have become so used to being big and having excess body fat on our frame that we've trained our bodies to carry excess body fat. So people are scared to bulk up. So I think that's one of the big reasons why people are like that. And if you are one of those people, it's like you're listening to this, you're like, oh, Steve, I don't have a problem leaning out. Well, some of you out there, you have skinny genetics. Like, you can eat pizza every week. We have a guy on our forum like that. He eats pizza, a whole thing of a whole pot pizza pie, the whole thing once a week. That's his cheat meal, and he eats very flexible. He'll eat, whatever he wants. He'll go out to eat or whatever, and he stays skinny. But the guy's always been skinny. He was one of those guys that were like, they grew up skinny and they have skinny genetics. But the damage you're doing into your body by putting these refined oils, it's a hidden danger that will not be shown by your physique. All those polyunsaturated fats from that pizza that you're putting into your body, and all those polyunsaturated fats from the low quality chicken breasts that you're putting into your body that you got from Chick-fil-A, or the Subway subs that you're eating, all that junk food, or the McDonald's food, it's hidden. You can't see the polyunsaturated fats clogging up your arteries, can you? But it's
Yeah, see,
happening, and
just
you're
as
gonna end up
quick
with a heart
question.
attack,
Sorry.
even if you are skinny. So don't think, well, if I have skinny genetics, I can just go eat what I want and get away with it either, because it's going to catch up to you when we're there. Go ahead. Mhm.
Yeah, sorry, just a quick question. And you've just mentioned something there. And I'm just thinking also of something, we get very few underweight guys come onto the forum. When again, back in the day, I'm thinking historically, it was almost common. 70s and 80s magazine was always someone that I was a kind of small guy. I've got a small frame. I find it hard to add weight. Now, those members that come on the forum stand out. And I'm the first one to say, oh, you're not eating enough, you're not training, blah, 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 blah. It is,
Yeah.
I think we've had 140, 150, 160 pound, and they're 6'1", 6'2", 6'3" tall.
Yeah.
But those ones stand out for me. The other thing I was going to ask you, and it's a silly question, just as an example of what you talked about in terms of the obesity crisis, etc., isn't a foot long sub 1,000+ calories, 1,200, 1,300 calories, and that's people's lunch. I actually made it, just as how silly this is in a perverse way, because I train heavy, because I'm relatively strong, because therefore I should carry a certain amount of muscle. as well as obviously because I could train for strength at a certain amount of body fat compared to, say, the more aesthetic bodybuilding type of listener. I eat very little. I literally had 2 Weetabix for breakfast this morning, then went to the gym and did what I did. My lunch yesterday was 2 egg and cress sandwiches. I eat shitloads in the evening, but I don't have this enormous amount of food. But if I was working in an office and I went down to the local Subway and had either a 6-inch, could even be 600-700 calories if I have the meatball option, or if it's a foot-long sub and it's cheese and ham and whatever the dressings are, people don't understand this, and I think they should. It's easily 1,000+ calories, and that's if it looks like a salad foot-long sub with a little bit of cheese or a little bit of ham. If it's a meatball, if it's the pizza sauce, I think they do vegetables. 12, 13, 1,400 calories for lunch is not uncommon. So Steve's probably true. I would say that the obesity crisis, we're very, very close to the Americans in terms of the proportion of people. But I think our kids ain't too bad, but we're getting that way. It's becoming way more common for fat kids.
See, but the difference is the EU has very stringent rules on food quality, and in North America we do not. And the thing is that in America, the bread is fake. It's got like 50 different ingredients in it. The meat that they put in there is full of nitrates. Even the lettuce that they put on it is sprayed with tons of chemicals, and the tomatoes sprayed with tons of chemicals. So really, you're putting a bunch of chemicals in your body. And the problem with that is that those chemicals go in your body and they do things in the body that you can't see. So it's best if you want to sub, make it on your own with good quality ingredients. That's very, very important. But in Britain, in UK and in Europe, you guys don't have that low food quality. I'll give you an example. I knew someone, they went to Italy for a vacation, right? And they ate tons of Italian food, pasta and pizza, and bread and everything.
And came back leaner.
They came back and they were down 7 pounds. They're like, they went to weigh themselves. They're like, oh, I bet
real cream, real tomatoes grown locally, real actual pizza.
It's all
bread.
real food.
Yeah.
But then here they eat the same food. Let's say you go to Olive Garden for every night for 7 days and you eat the same food you just ate in Italy, you'll gain 15 pounds and you'll probably end up with,
the unsaturated fats and stuff.
All that shit that gets in your body. So it just shows you the difference. And look, at the end of the day,
bread alone, Steve, the bread alone, we have less salt, and I believe some of our bread has a little bit of sugar in, but what we would call normal bread has less sugar in America. Your bread is actually kind of sweet compared to ours. It's what people are used to. So and that's just on the bread alone.
I don't want to spend too much time on it, but let me just get this point. I watched a video about this, about Subway franchise. You guys can go on YouTube and watch these videos because people put up YouTube videos of this. And the Subway franchise owner, he bought a Subway franchise, right? And he has to work there every fucking day, 7 days a week, like 12-hour days, because rather than hire someone just to pull a profit, barely pull a profit, where he makes like 60,000 net a year, okay, he has to work like crazy. And so where do you think they cut their costs? They cut their costs on the food quality, because they have to have those nitrates in the meat so the meat doesn't spoil. They have to have all those chemicals in the bread so the bread doesn't turn moldy. They have to spray all their vegetables with pesticides and stuff because it's going to be cheaper that way, and it's not going to shrivel up the next day and turn bad. So they have to sell fake food because they have to get their margins under control where they can actually turn a profit, where the franchise owner can actually turn a profit. So he doesn't give a shit that he's selling you fake food that's killing you. He just wants to make a profit, and that's how it is in the entire restaurant industry. And a lot of restaurants don't even make money off the food they sell. They make money from the alcohol, and they make money from the desserts that they sell you. Those are where the profit margins are. That's why when you go to a restaurant, they always ask you, did you like dessert? Would you like dessert? Because they're trying to get you to buy the dessert, and they always want to give you alcohol because they make big margins on the alcohol. That's where they make their money. They don't make their money on the food. So they have to literally cut costs by giving you low quality food. So this ordering out thing that we're having now via the apps and all this stuff, that's where you're going to dirty bulk. And that's not the right way to bulk. That's the kind of the point of this. That's not the right way to bulk. You're going to dirty bulk.
Let me jump in just for a second here, Steve, just to finish this particular topic. And it occurred to me as you were just saying that the quality of the nutrition back in the day would have been better. When I was saying about the 50s, the 60s, the 70s, and even the early 80s, and those people were bulking up the way that they were bulking, the food that they ate was fairly straightforward. I think of the Arnold and others go into the local restaurant, Sun House or the fire station, whatever it was, 5 minutes from Gold's Gym, and the food they were eating was scrambled eggs on toast and bacon and stuff like that. So as you say, just the food quality would have been better even when they was bulking old school. It would have just been a greater volume of healthier compared to today's food. Honestly, sometimes with regards to this, and we will touch on nutrition as well, guys, we'll probably get into that now, and training as well. It's simple and effective suggestions for bulking is sometimes just eating more of the quality food that you guys should be using. I want to touch on now both the nutrition and training, right? So this is just fairly straightforward stuff, and it podcasts of the type talking about a very similar discussion and topic that we are today. In order to gain traction, love to sex things up. If you want to have an argument on the internet, via YouTube, via Instagram, or wherever else, I'm thinking of Greg Duquette, for example, Steve. You know, you'll say something crazy on your podcast, and then someone else will comment on your podcast. And in order to gain traction and literally get attention by a listener, by a viewer, people will sometimes try to sell you, and I use that word euphemistically, a new idea. So this is a new approach, and this is how you should do it, and this is the way that we bulk now, and blah, blah, blah. And in reality, it's not that complicated, whether it's the training or whether it's nutrition. So let me start with the training. Kind of a quote unquote training guru from time to time, which we've said I am on these podcasts. And the truth of the matter is, what bulked your dad, if he trained, what bulked your granddad and your uncle, your previous generations, bulks you now. It's always going to be the very unsexy, big compound exercises. It's always going to be exercises for your shoulders. You don't bulk doing lateral raises. If you want to build up the mass of your delts, top of your body, it's going to be heavy, heavy benching. It's going to be heavy overhead pressing. It's going to be low to medium volume with weights that you previously didn't use, especially when you were cutting, when you were leaner, when it was that little bit harder to train in the summer months, in the spring, versus the autumn and the winter. It's going to be heavy rows, bent over rows. It's going to be, to a lesser degree, Romanian deadlifts, but it's certainly going to be weight picks up off the floor or from below the knee in the rack. It's going to be heavy standing calf raises. It's going to be heavy leg press, Steve. With regards to legs, there's a good argument to be made to keep the volume in terms of sets and reps kind of moderate. Don't go too low. I would actually suggest, for example, especially if you train more bodybuilder style through the year, say 12 reps, 8 to 12 reps, I wouldn't go up beyond 8 reps for most of the bigger exercises. Legs, I would take you from 12 to 15 because they're very anabolic. If you can use moderate to heavy weight, not max weight like you would do with the lower reps, but let's say, for example, you're squatting 300 pounds. And that might be for, say, 6, 7, 8 reps. I would have you go down to 225, 230, 240, but try to get 12 to 15 reps and create the stimulus that way. Literally changing what you do from the summertime, the spring, the warmer days and months, into doing the opposite in the winter time, even if it's just 2, 3, 4 months, 5 months, versus what you do the rest of the year, just doing the opposite. So if you're a high volume person, do a low volume, and so on and so forth. But it's always going to be the compound. That's heavy, easy bar curls, skull crushers, dips. There's no sort of sexy goblet squats. There's no sort of weird thing with rubber bands and whatever else. Every single exercise, if it's for a particular reason, will have its place. If you're rehabbing, if you're cutting, if you have a certain head of the muscle that you want to bring out, that's fine. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about bulk. And in this example, lean bulk, new school versus old school, but the compounds will still work. So what do you think about the training aspect for lean bulking versus, say, for example, the rest of the year, Steve?
I always look, at the end of the day, if you go to the gym and you watch the big guys, the way they're lifting, it's going to be a certain way. You know, they go in there with a purpose. They go in there with a plan. They go in there with the compound lifts. They start with the compound lifts. Do they do isolation? Sure. But look, at the end of the day, let's say you want to bulk up and build big arms. You know, do you go in there with 20-pound dumbbells and start doing curls in front of the mirror like I see some people doing? I see people do this shit all the time. Why? I have no idea. I think they're just trying to look at themselves. I think they think that dumbbell curls are the way to get big arms. I'm not really sure. But you know what the truth is? You know how the big guys with the biggest arms build those big arms? They build those big arms with heavy rows, as you said earlier. They build those big arms with pull-ups. You know, that's how they build those big arms.
Cleans is one of your favorite ones, Steve. Heavy cleans.
Well, cleans, man, let me tell you something. Cleans have built up my traps like you wouldn't believe. And you know, I don't do shrugs, but my traps are huge because I've done for years. I did cleans, and cleans are something I don't do as much anymore because of all my injuries. So it's a really tough one. But yeah, cleans for sure. And they if you do them correctly and really go ass to grass on those cleans and really go down, it will work your lower body as well. So those are wonderful exercises. And same thing with the back, same thing with the hamstrings and the quads and all this. You know, they didn't get there by doing they didn't build nice hamstrings and glutes and all this stuff with isolation exercises. They did it with squats, box squats and front squats, different types of squats, lunges, you know, carrying weights around. I think they call it what, the farmer's walk, Mobster, where you pick up a 45-pound weight in each hand and you walk around the gym. Isn't that what they call it?
Yeah. You can
And
do that with
yeah,
shoulders, do that
yep,
for farmer's walking.
I used to do that. I used to do that in the gym. I was the only dude to do that. And I walk around the gym in a big circle holding a 45-pound weight in each hand. That's how I was able to get so strong. That's how I was able to end up squatting, you know, 500-600 pounds at my peak in my mid-30s. You know, that's how I did it. It wasn't
Nice,
from
right?
doing leg extensions, 2 sets of leg extensions, and then calling it a day. So you got to think about that. And a lot of times, you know, as Mobster said, the social media thing, you got to remember our podcast, we don't, you know, our podcast isn't monetized on social media because of the content we talk about. So we don't have to use the clickbait approach, but these guys who do these videos, these training videos, they have to do clickbait. So for them, who wants to watch a guy doing pull-ups, or who wants to watch a guy, you know, doing some of these other exercises that are boring to watch? They want to watch them stand in front of a mirror and do curls with their veins popping out of their arms. That makes for a better video than actually, you know, than doing a pull-up, you know? Does that make sense? So it's for show. So what they do in the video is not what they did to look the way they did. It's just basically show. It's like watching a movie, and you think they just show up and they do the movie for an hour and a half, but you don't realize that movie took months and months and months to put together. It took a lot of things to put together. Or going to a football game and you watch the game and you think that the players just show up at 1:00 and play the game and then go home and you don't see them again for a week. No, during the week they have to practice. During the week they have to, you know, watch the game film. It takes a lot before you are able to play the game. So the same thing with weight training. It's not what you see in the videos that made them the way they are. It's the training they put behind the scenes that made them the way they are. The video is just for show. It's just for them to get clicks.
The foundational work, Steve, the years of plugging away, the years of adding muscle. I watched some of the current would-be Mr. Olympias, Derek Lunsford, recent videos. And Derek is probably more 3D than he's ever been before. And Derek worked up to, just recently, in a video of a couple of weeks ago, 5.5, 6 plates on the front squat in the Smith machine. That's 240 kilograms if it's 6 plates, even with a counterbalanced Smith machine bar. That is a shitload of weight. And he himself said on one of those videos, it's as strong as I've ever been. That's the most I've ever done on front squats. That shit's not sexy. It looks stupidly hard. He's got people spotting him. Yes, he's doing the isolation exercises, but he's still fucking front squatting, even in the Smith machine, in excess of 500 pounds, probably 525, 530 pounds. That is a shitload of weight. And again, more 3D looking, thicker looking than he's ever looked before. If he can bring that to the Olympia stage, cleaned and polished, it'd be absolutely amazing. And also, and just to touch on that again before we talk about nutrition, even on the quote unquote sexed up clickbait type videos or whatever else, the more entertaining type stuff that we might watch, you again, first off, you're not, we said already, you're not seeing what they did to get to where they are. So all the foundational work with heavy basic exercises. And again, even in those kind of videos where the focus is on the quote unquote sexy clickbait type stuff, there will still be a foundational type exercise. They might not focus on the squat or the leg press or the bench press or whatever. So they might focus on dumbbell flyers and allowing you to see the contraction of the fibers in the top of the chest on pec deck or whatever else. They're almost skim over the part of the video where it's benching 3, 4, 5 plates. But because you want to see muscle detail, you want to see what's going on. And again, it's an issue sometimes in terms of that side of things for traction and it not being sexy to talk about brutal, heavyweight, hard work, etc. But trust me on this, guys. I'm just on the simple science side of it. The bigger the muscle or the more muscle, including support muscles that have worked, the more anabolic an effect you're going to have. It's simple, almost like thermodynamics, Steve. You are burning more calories, you are stimulating more muscle tissue. Therefore, the anabolic response, the body's response to the shit that you fucking put on it with this unsexy kind of training will overall affect your testosterone levels, your response by the central nervous system, and your body's requirements for nutrition to respond to the fucking crazy training that you've done. So, for example, as Steve said, Steve's squatting 500-600 pounds on squats. I know how tall Steve is. I've got a rough idea how much he weighs. That is a shitload of weight, Steve, for someone with your frame, your height, etc. And absolutely would put you in the probably top 5%, certainly top 1 or 2% in pretty much every gym ever, anywhere. So that's how you get big and strong. The nutritional side of stuff, which I'll touch upon now. Now, we talked about earlier on the modern obesity crisis. I want to come from it a little bit differently insofar as and I use this for the small percentage, and it is a small percentage seemingly now compared to before. It was very common, and we can go back in history just for the average Joe in a high street who didn't train, never mind those that did, to see photographs on the 50s and 60s and say, is there an obese person in this photograph? As Steve said, 70s, early 80s, it might be 1, 2, 3 people in a big high school that were fat, obese, properly overweight, jelly chins, big bellies, etc. Now it's become way more common. Even there was a hoo-ha in this country a couple of years ago, Steve, where kids were being weighed at school for medical reasons, just height, weight, etc., etc. And then there was a note sent back saying, little Johnny, little Jane, whatever else, is, got a BMI of 30 and they're 6 or 7. And it wasn't just that mum and dad got upset that they were told that their kids were fat. It was the proportion of kids that were being sent home with these notations or having this stuff come in the post or whatever else. It's a much bigger percentage than it was before. But let me take it from the you are underweight point of view to begin with. And after all, you're listening to this show because you want a way of adding lean bulk. Is it sexy again to say, for example, Steve, add a fucking meal? Right? The amount of people that are actually underweight, never mind those that are obese and have lost weight but want to add a few pounds of lean muscle tissue, it's sometimes real simple again. And it might be, for example, adding a simple high protein meal. It might be, for example, again, Steve, and I've actually done this myself back in the day, a few boiled eggs and a small steak. And it's almost a snack, but you're still looking 30, 40, 50 grams of protein. And there's enough calories in there, 200-300 calories, just to add sufficient anabolism, spared fat in the steak, a little bit of healthy fat in the eggs, enough fat and enough carbohydrates just to allow the protein to be utilized for muscle building. And it ain't complicated. I take a simplistic approach in terms of protein shakes. Steve and I have a bit of back and forth on this, but I have unflavored protein shakes. I don't eat my flavored with mint and chocolate and strawberry, whatever else. I take an unflavored, but it's literally right now, Steve, 1 fucking scoop when I get back from the gym. And that's, I think, it's sufficient in that particular example. It's about 28 grams of protein. I would quite often see with the underweight again, This is someone that wants to bulk up, wants to add a little bit of muscle tissue. They often as not either say one of two things: either underestimate the amount of food they're eating. I eat loads. No, you do not. If you ate loads, you'd be bigger. If you ate loads, you'd be heavier, even if you were fatter. You're not eating as much as you think you are. That's number one. And number two is, again, they need to add an extra meal. They need to eat more than they actually think they are, and so on and so forth. What about, Steve, from the other perspective, the average Joe, so not vastly underweight? What would you talk about in terms of nutritional ideas, simple nutritional ideas for someone that's looking to add a few pounds of muscle tissue, just as a tip or trick that they can use for their diet, for their nutrition?
Look, at the end of the day, you got to learn the difference between these macros. You got protein, fats, and carbs. You got to learn the difference between a healthy macro and an unhealthy macro. If you want to bulk properly, you got to feed your muscle. You got to feed your muscle good quality food. I'll give you an example on each. Protein. What's the top protein option out there is animal organs. And then what's the least protein option? It's these cold cuts that are full of nitrates, these low quality chickens that are fed low quality foods, and all the chicken is
we've had delis and canteen food as bad options before.
Yeah, things out of cans, processed meats, the bacon, the sausage, all this stuff. It's all processed. So you got to get the good quality, high quality food. The grass-fed beef is going to be superior to the not grass-fed beef, the low quality beef. Step 1 versus step 4 or step 5. It's going to be different. You should always go for step 4 or above when it comes to beef. And that's going to be optimal. The cow ate grass. That's what cows are supposed to eat. And that's their grass finish versus grain finish makes a big difference. When it comes to carbs, what's the difference between eating cake and ice cream and cookies versus eating good quality carbs like the brown rice, the sweet potatoes, the fruit, the veggies? These are good quality carbs, and these are what builds good quality bulking and feed your muscles. When it comes to fats, low quality fats, refined oils, anything you get from fast food or restaurant food, it's all full of refined fats. Good quality fats. Bone broth. If you've never tried bone broth before, go get some good quality bones, and you can basically get a crock pot, and basically you put the bones in water or plain broth, and you cook it up. You slow cook it for about 36 hours, and boom, now you have bone broth. And that's the best fats you could put in your body on earth. And our ancestors used to eat that. They used to eat that off the animal. That was the leftover part of the animal, the bone part. They used to take that, put it in a pot, and slow cook it, and they'd eat that broth. And that was full of collagen. So that's a great way to heal your body, especially if you're in the gym lifting heavy weights. That's a great way to heal it. Bad fats are killer. They're killer on your joints. They do the opposite of the good fat. So again, Mobster mentioned eggs. Eggs is a perfect example. I don't even have to go further than eggs, but say there's good quality eggs and there's bad quality eggs. The cheap eggs from Walmart are going to be low quality. You could tell because the color of the yolk. When we see the guys in Australia on the forum, which has extremely high food standards, right?
Yeah.
People in Australia complain, oh, food prices are expensive, but you're paying for what you're getting. In America, food is cheap. We have the cheapest food prices of any advanced country in the world, but our food quality is very low. So you have to make the right decision when you go to the grocery store to pick the good quality eggs. The eggs should have that orange color to the yolk. Otherwise, it means that the chickens weren't fed a natural diet. So we see those Australians when they post on their logs, the eggs that they post, Mobster, look so much different than the American eggs.
Yeah.
Because the American eggs are full of chemicals and full of crap. That's not going to feed your muscles, guys. So make sure you get good quality. So in America, what you do is you go to a good place and you look for that humane sticker on the eggs. And that tells you that the chickens were fed a natural diet. They were out in the sun. They were getting those vitamins from the sun. They were eating the insects off the ground and the seeds off the ground and pecking around and doing what chickens are supposed to do all day and having a good time and laying good quality eggs versus the chickens that were put in a coop, in a cage with disease rampant, walking in their own shit all day And then what happens when you eat those eggs? You get salmonella poisoning, and you wonder what happened. So it's very important to not buy those eggs. This way, it encourages these farmers and these corporate farms in America to start transitioning over to making high quality eggs. Yes, you will pay more for the better quality eggs because you need more space for the chickens to run around. You need a fence to keep away predators. It's going to cost more. This is why I laugh at some of you out there who say, oh, Steve, I'm not paying an extra $1 or $2 for the carton of eggs. That's a scam. Well, dude, it costs more for the farmer to raise those chickens. So
absolutely.
you're compensating the farmer for the extra work that he's having to do. And to feed the chickens a better diet costs more money as well because you need land for them to run around. So you need to purchase more land. Does that make sense? So yes, it costs more to get grass-fed beef. No shit, because you need land for the cows to graze. So I always laugh at people like that, and they're like, "Oh, organic's a scam." No, organic's not a scam. An organic tomato that isn't smothered in pesticide, when it goes in your body, it's not going to stress your body out. It's going to allow your body to grow. It's going to allow your muscles to grow. You see, so it's not a scam, and it's going to keep
Can
you
I just
living
bring
longer.
just to jump in on this topic as well, Steve? So one more tip for you guys before we move on to what bulk and PEDs from Para Pharma we would pick. What I occasionally see, and this applies more to what I call the working man or woman, the working, whether it's at work in an office, but specifically if you go out and get your hands dirty. And this is way more common in America, but it's kind of common here. And what sometimes happens, and this is where the tip comes in, if you are looking to lean bulk, we would talk about on the forums and on the logs, those people that meal prep win in terms of their success for their target. They're way more likely to be leaner if that's their aim. They're way more likely to bulk up, get stronger, etc. If they meal prep, they're way more successful. Where the working Joe comes in, and that point is that what I quite often see is that there's an enormous amount of people that are eating at their desk and they'll eat donuts and pizzas and stuff that have been brought into the office. Some people are actually uncomfortable having a meal prepped meal with them because people in the office want to know why they're eating like that, why don't you come and have some cookies with us, etc. The Joe that's working in construction will sometimes start off well and then eat nothing in the lunchtime or no healthy snacks. Protein bars get thrown in if you're lucky, because they're working through. They'll start working, they'll keep working until the end of the day. And then if you're very, very lucky, they might grab something on the way home for the family or go home and eat a meal of a night time. So they might often, during the week, Steve, 5 days a week, only eat first thing before they go to work and then when they get home from work. So literally having 2 meals. And there's an argument to be made for that in terms of health, but you're looking to add lean muscle. So do not be embarrassed by the office thing. You don't have to work through it. It doesn't take long to eat a meal prep meal. But literally don't miss out on meals. Don't miss out on these things. And if you must snack, make it a healthier snack, whether it's fruit, whether if it has to be, I would rather you have a protein bar than some sort of piece of confectionery. I would prefer you to have, say, for example, homemade flapjacks or even homemade protein bars if you must. But again, you'll find all kind of, whether it's lean, like I said, getting lean, getting ripped, getting shredded, or whether it's bulking, those people that have the greatest success when it comes to nutrition are ones that are prepared for what they need to do. And that, as I said, we're even at university for the younger listeners that are studying, etc. It will be healthy options that you prepared, whether it's as simple as an example, we've seen this done, a simple small bag of boiled, ready cooked rice, which you can eat cold, but if you want to warm it up in the microwave, fine, or keep it sort of warm somehow, and a chicken breast. That as opposed to nothing. That as opposed to missing a meal. Because how the fuck are you guys going to bulk up? How are you going to add a few pounds of muscle tissue just having breakfast and a good dinner? You need to be having this food through the day. It doesn't need to be, as we've seen in the past, 6, 7, 8 meals a day, but don't be missing them. Let's move on to the bulking stuff here, Steve. So I'll start off with a couple of orals here. I'm looking at Para Pharma's product as usual. And I said before that one of the best bulkers for some users has been a product like their Anadrol 50. I've talked about this in previous shows where we've seen up to 20 pounds. I think it's typically a new user, and something that Steve or I are going to talk about as well is how we would cycle if we were straight into the game. It was a first way of bulking up in PEDs. So, for example, I've heard of new users, Steve, never used PEDs before, and have decided to go have Anadrol for the first time. 50 milligrams a day is actually perfect here, but I would probably split it into two, half in the morning, half in the afternoon. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 weeks here, Steve. And I have heard, as I said, up to 20-pound gains. So talk about the new old, Stephen, and maybe jumping with another all that you'd pick before we talk about injectables for lean bulking.
Yeah, and look, Anadrol 50 milligrams a day for 5 weeks. I mean, if you can't bulk on that, you're in the wrong business, you know? So it's a great one. Another one, I know it's your favorite, Mobster, is Dianabol. And Dianabol anywhere from 10 to 50 milligrams. But if you do run Dianabol at a higher end, you're going to want to get the Para Pharma Aromacin as well to run with it because of the estrogen issue. So it's going to be more of a water retention type of bulk. So if that's what you're looking for, it's very, very dummy proof, and it's the #1 bulking oral of all time, and probably the #1 steroid of all time that's been used, Mobster, because guys back in your day used to love using it to bulk up. So you're going to notice on the Dianabol within the first week, you're going to notice the scale moving. So your appetite's going to go higher. So you can really take advantage of all those good quality foods that we were talking about earlier with the Dianabol. That's where you want to go with the Dianabol.
Let me give you a straightforward one. This has always worked for me, but we will try to touch upon the idea of first cycle versus experience cycle. So this absolutely has worked for me. I've touched on this in a bunch of shows. They do a Decan 300, Steve, which is a decanate, of course, or Deca, and a Sustanon or Suster 350. And those two combined for me, I would probably be looking at that right there, Steve. That's 650 milligrams. I'd probably do 3/4 of a milligram, or should I say half of each of those twice a week. That would take me to, let me look on that, 650. I don't want to go 1,250, 1,300 milligrams. So 3/4 of that amount split over the week, still going to give me 750, 800, 900 milligrams over the week, which is probably what I'm doing right now, Steve, ironically. And I've always bulked up on that. What about, and again, 6, 7, 8 weeks on that one. What about, as again, if you was more experienced, Steve, and you're looking to bulk now, we know that bulk and adding muscle is easier when you're new. What about the more experienced listener that wants to add a few pounds of muscle tissue? Is that much more difficult to add it? What would you use for the Para Pharma PED choices?
So, if you have more experience, Tren, a lot of people don't realize with Tren, I'm not really sure why, but Tren is a great bulker. In fact, in the cattle industry, they use the Tren to bulk up the cows before, the end of their life. And there's a reason they use Tren. It's because it works. It works incredibly well. So really on Tren, whenever I get on Tren, I gain like 5 or 8 pounds, like within the first couple weeks, right off the bat. Just out of nowhere, I just gained 5 to 8 pounds. And it will make you strong as fuck, and it will make you gain a lot of mass. But it's very important with Tren to spread your carbs out, and good quality carbs. So lots of sweet potatoes, lots of brown rice, lots of fruits, lots of veggies on the Tren, along with your protein options as well. But you want to get a lot of carbs because that helps with the side effects. So even the more, and when it comes to Tren, you could start out with a low dose. If it's your first time using it, 200 or 250 milligrams. The more advanced you get, the more you would run more of it, and then the more you'd stack. So a lot of people, once you get really, really advanced and you have some experience with Tren itself, the stack that makes bulkers' dreams, Mobster, would be using Tren and Deca together. Oh my Lord.
Yes.
So you'd use them together, and you'd go say go about 300 milligrams of each. Okay.
Yeah.
And then you stack some Proviron with it. And let me tell you something. If you can't bulk on that and get strong as fuck, then you're in the wrong business, because you will absolutely have insane amount of you'll become a mass monster on that stack.
Looking at the options here, Steve, I'd probably be looking at the Trenbo E, so treninanthate, or the Tren mix, and then, as you said, some sort of testosterone. A simple, straightforward approach might be testosterone enanthate. That's fairly straightforward. And as Steve said, I don't think the necessity here to go much over 650 milligrams total of the both combined, and maybe up to 12 weeks. I would also throw in, Steve, it's a lot easier to bulk in the winter time, a lot easier when you're covered up to do the compounds and stuff that we talked about with a small but significant higher percentage of body fat. And I can believe Steve Trent with if it works for you in that particular way, Trent sweats can keep you warm in the winter time. It's arguably easier to add a few pounds of muscle tissue and certainly to bulk in the colder months. Like I said earlier on with regards to autumn, winter versus spring and summer, we're more naturally inclined to strip off, to show what we've got and look at more polished muscle tissue, whatever else. I certainly agree with regards to the Proviron, Steve, which we know that they've got. Purely and simply because we know, and we've discussed this on recent cycles, I'm looking at the Proviron 25 product. One of those pills per day is sufficient. And we've used the analogy of this turbo boosting, adding something to your stack, whether it's a Masteron or Proviron, as a means of freeing up more free testosterone and just basically getting more out of it. You're not looking at crazy dosages here. We don't really need to be crazy dosages. There will be a small percentage of users that do. There'll be a small percentage of you listeners that like, for example, to run, and I wouldn't, Steve, but go the trend in Amphate or for that matter, the Trembo A acetate as high as 1,000 milligrams. But again, I think you're looking here really for the out and out freaks in terms of, with the handle PEDs at high level, and also the true trend fans, etc., etc., and perhaps the really seriously heavy, big, muscular, open pro type bodybuilder. And I've got to be honest, Steve, and I'm thinking of James Hollandhead as an example, talking about how he kind of dropped trend from all of his training protocols because he really wasn't getting on with it. He felt super uncomfortable. Even at that sort of situation, even when we talk about pro type cycles, even for out of season, bulking up, getting crazy strong, which we still occasionally see with the professional bodybuilders now, trend or high dose cycles tend to be for the shorter periods of time. It's not sexy to say that, but no one's running grams a week like they have done and found it was horrible for 16 weeks at a time. When we talk about competition cycles, when we talk about what they're doing, it sounds like a long period of time, but it's almost broken down into 3 different stages. But no one's running, I would think it's arguable, Steve, grams and grams of testosterone and tren and whatever else for 16, 20, 30 weeks. We still occasionally see this where people talk about 24-week stacks. I'm not a fan of people doing high-level PEDs anyway. And even the 24-week cycles, to me, you're kind of on the 5, nearly 6 months. Doesn't make any sense to me. I would rather you take this approach, and that includes using performance-enhancing products from Para Pharma. It would be thus. If you take the colder months, autumn and winter, and you train for 3 months, even if you TRT or cruise, on low dose, i.e. TRT and cruising, and then introduce for the latter 3 months when you're kind of taking half of a run at it, bulking up even more, but using obviously performance enhancing products from Para Pharma here. And it might just be straightforward, for example, testosterone. Talk about EQ, Steve, which a lot of people like to bulk off, especially lean bulking.
Yeah, and EQ has lower side effects. So if you want to avoid some of the side effects from the other steroids we've talked about in terms of the estrogen and androgenic effects, then equipoise will be a good option too for someone who's more new or more advanced. And look, if you're more new, a lower end dose of 400 milligrams, you're more advanced 600 milligrams, and you can run the equipoise for 12 weeks, run a little testosterone with it, run a little D-bol with it to give it a little kick, and you'll get some good quality lean muscle mass. And look, it's a good one. It's a good one for, a lean bulk. It's not going to blow you up overnight. It's going to be like a slow quality builder. So a lot of people like that. They like to see the results slow, but have more quality. So, but if you're looking for something fast, equipoise wouldn't be the option for you. But the nice thing about equipoise is if you like high volume when you're training, it works really good. If you really like to push the reps while you're training on heavy reps, it's a really good option as well. So yeah, and we've covered a bunch of good steroids, Mobsters. Any other steroids you want to talk about?
I'm just looking at the EQ options here, Steve. They do a Boldo 300 and a Boldo 500. I factor the bulking and just for ease of use. And I've discussed previously on other shows with you how the higher dose products I used to not be a fan of. but we've seen very little PEP, etc., etc. I'd actually probably push the listener towards the Boldo 500 option that Para Pharma produces, just because it's high volume. You can mix that with something else, and it's a little bit easier. It's less pinning overall for the week, etc., etc. And again, way less PEP, much better products than used to be produced back in the past with higher volume, like 500 milligram, 300 milligram, etc. products that ever used to be. And a company like Para Pharma is definitely going to produce high quality products in the area. When it comes to PEDs, when it comes to food, when it comes to training, simple works, straightforward works, old school stacks that have worked in the past will continue to work now. There might be, and again, this is why we'd encourage you to come on the forums, specific requirements. There might be PEDs that you don't personally get on with, so you need other options. You might have run, for example, my favorite, Susten Decker. Steve and I both talked about those products as a great bulker. And then you might find that it doesn't work for you. It might be the way that you run it. It might be the diet and nutrition that you were using at that time. So we get you to come on the forums and talk about specific issues, products availability, even just getting products sometimes into your country and what's available versus what's not available, and so on and so forth. I want to talk a little bit here, Steve, about Para Pharma in and of itself. So on a recent show, something that we talked about in the past is just the sheer length of time companies have been around in the game. And the website itself suggests 13 years. I actually think it's coming on a little bit more than that, and they need to update it, Steve. I think we're talking about 14, 15 years now. And for 14, 15 years, it's basically a decade and a half. You do not last in any business 14 or 15 years, a decade and a half. I don't care what you're selling, whether it's shoes or tires, or in this case, anabolics, peptides, etc., growth hormone, and so on and so forth, Steve. For 14 or 15 years, if you're not doing your job right, if you're not producing solid product that is selling on a regular basis, both directly and through resellers worldwide, whether that's a UK-based seller, American-based seller, Japan, Middle East, wherever, worldwide, for years at a time, without a great reputation for producing high-quality products. You don't have, for example, Steve, and I see this, most of the better companies have a diverse range of products. A lot of companies now, including others that we've spoken about, produce blends, which of course Para Pharma does as well, and singular products, and of the kind that customers want to see. They have, for example, here, Steve, 45 products across the range. We just skim across because we're not touched on the peptides and growth hormone today. We've just touched upon that. 45 products produced to a high quality again and again and again. Resellers include some of the biggest resellers in the industry that have been selling Para Pharma for years. And we talked about, if you're a reseller, what do you want? You don't want any aggravation. You want solid ass products coming in from the brands that you've chosen. You want good customer feedback. You want great customer service. That includes you as a reseller with the brand, as well as, of course, with your own customers, and so on and so forth. So talk about Para Pharma as a quality and what they need to do, which they are doing, in order to be a great company like we've talked about.
Yeah, and Para Pharma, look, Mobster and I, we both use Para Pharma. They have everything. They have the orals, injectables, all the ones we talked about, different options for them. They have your on-cycle things like Aromacin or Arimidex that you're going to need, Letro for estrogen. They have your PCT products. They have everything in between, and they're one-stop shop. So fast shipping. They have different shipping options, both domestic and international. They have excellent customer service, and they have fantastic deals. Seems like every time I come on the forum, they've got a new deal for the month where you can save, 10, 20, 30, even 40%. They have different ways for you to save money if you want to take advantage of that. So really, at the end of the day, they're providing good quality products at a really, really good price. So that's what we like to see for sure. And the bottom line for me, I don't mind, paying more for something that actually works. And Para Pharma, their products are competitively priced, and they are what they say they are. So if you order Deca from them, you're getting Deca. If you order Debo, you're getting Debo. If you order Tren, you're getting Tren. There's no mix. They don't, mix up the gear. They don't dose them incorrectly. They've been tested. They've been verified independently and anonymously to prove that their products are good to go. And they have some great reps on the forum as well who are there to guide you and give you advice on all these steroids. So a lot of respect for Para Pharma and what they've been doing for the past, as you said, Mobster, 12, 13, 14 years. They keep
Yes.
getting better and better.
Yes, and guys, I mean, all of our approved sources, but specifically Para Pharma today, have options for you, whether you're lean bulking, dirty bulking, old school, new school, whether you're shredding, whether you're cutting. I've used products of theirs for cutting. You can come onto the forums and you can check out logs of people who are running Para Pharma right now. I will also touch upon something that Steve said, and that is in-country shipping, whether that's the domestic US market or the domestic UK market, is probably the fastest. I'm thinking of one particular reseller of theirs that I've ever experienced in the industry ever. And in fact, we even almost had a complaint about it because someone didn't realize that they'd ordered international and had to wait, whereas they'd have a product in under a week arrived to the door, and that was in America. So the shipping's absolutely great. Customer feedback's great. You can come on the forum, check out the logs of people who are running a product, seeing if they've got their training and nutrition on point, the success they've had with Para Pharma products for yourself, not just us, Steve and I, talking as we are now, but people that are literally running their products for weeks, 8 weeks, 6 weeks, 12 weeks at a time, and see the feedback that they've given in their logs for the products that they're using and what they're doing, especially as per today's subject of lean bulking, as we talked about. Let us know your thoughts on Para Pharma products. Let us know your thought on lean bulking. Have you done anything differently, perhaps that other people haven't done? Have you learned what to do that helps you with lean bulk? Has that snacking at work thing sort of rang a bell in your mind, etc., etc.? Let us know in the comments below. Let us know. Come onto the forum. Check out, as I said, about logs, Para Pharma products, reviews, and so on and so forth. Please note, we are not doctors and the opinions are ours. It is our view and based on our experience and views on the topic. Our podcasts are for informational purposes and entertainment only. The freedom of speech and the First Amendment applies.